Greetings wherever you are. This is All the Gear, No Idea, the Aviation Photography Podcast. I'm Dave Lockwoods. Hope you're well. With me once again are the three other reprobates.
Three amigos.
Three amigos? Well, what does that make me then? Spare part?
Spare part.
Yeah, thank you. Knew you were going to say that. Let's find out what we've got. We've got Bradley Rogers with us as usual.
Hi guys.
With his posh voice.
Yeah, of course.
Indeed. Socials are Bradders.
Thrust Aviation Imagery, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook.
Indeed. Below, well, no, to the right, as I look at him, because we're recording this on Zoom as usual, Mr. Kieran Wilkinson. Sir, where are you from? Tell us what you are, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Kieran Wilkinson from Tup North in Manchester. And on Instagram, you can find me at FlyByCode, Facebook, Kieran Wilkinson Photography, or KieranWilkinson.com.
Indeed, and we should have had a life jacket on yesterday with that rain that you had.
Yeah, I spent some paddling in Yorkshire Museum's very own new boating lake.
There you go. And as I look at it, to the left of me, it's Mr. High and Dry Photography himself, Wayne Kenworth, with the Saabs. He can talk about Saabs now because it's not January.
I can talk about Saabs, but it's Saab. There we go. Let's get them all out of the way before we start recording. You can find me at highanddryphotography.com on the old-fashioned internet and on Flickr and Facebook as well for the younger people.
Hang on. I'm on Facebook as well, so am I younger than you? Yeah, we
That's
are.
two old people there.
Oh, the two old, the two old so-and-sos. I'm milljets.uk, milljets_UK, Flickr, Instagram, Twitter. I won't call it the other word because it's not.
The artist formerly known as
Oh,
Twitter.
It's the artist formerly known as Twitter. Yeah, you can find me on there. Not that I actually post on Twitter these days. I do on my other account, but that's mainly football related, and I was quite happy at the weekend because we didn't lose. We won't go into that, though, there. So we're going to talk about this evening. Gentlemen, what are we talking? I think we've got the drum roll. Is this the right one? Worked it well tonight. There you go. What are we talking about, brothers, this evening?
Okay, so we're going to look at the first steps into aviation photography, sort of where to start.
Indeed, because you've all got to start somewhere. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but what have we been up to since the last pod? Well, the last time we actually all talked was the end of November, wasn't it, before we had the two Eric specials. Hope you enjoyed the Eric specials, because he can talk, can't he, Wayne?
Well, he can talk. I thought we could talk, but no, Eric beats us.
Gives us a run for your money. So, guys, what have you been up to since we last spoke? Probably back in November. Wayne, what have you been up to?
Photography-wise, just re-editing old shoots. Started off with the Saabs, obviously, because it's my favourite images. And it was just good to go back and take a look at the images with a different set of eyes, do some different edits, and find a load of images that I'd first decided not to edit that edited really, really well.
Good stuff. Right, Kieran, what have you been up to?
Yes, I've been doing some product photography.
Ooh.
But it's okay. It's got aircraft on it because it was for some airfix kits at Yorkshire Museum. And then I spent last weekend on Saturday down at the Shuttleworth collection with Centre of Aviation Photography.
Yep.
So a little bit different. Was more of a tour and behind-the-scenes access, really, into Shuttleworth. And it was great to see that collection. I think I'll see the air shows a bit differently this year with all that knowledge.
Excellent stuff. And Brad, what have you been up to?
Yeah, so not much to shout about aviation-wise. Did do a trip to Newark. I think I mentioned that on the last pod. Really good museum.
Fantastic museum.
Yeah.
It's just got so much stuff for a relatively small museum. And it's the only place in the UK you can see a Vigan.
And a Draken.
And a Draken, yes.
And they're likely to move them into the same hangar eventually.
They were talking about that when we was there, yeah. That's quite some exciting plans. I hope maybe if they have to move some stuff outside, maybe they would let people
to shoot it.
Exactly. So,
wink, wink if you're listening.
yeah. And I also talked about buying a new lens. Well,
yes, go on.
I thought about it some more, and I thought, well, you only live once, and I bought it. So I have purchased a Canon 500 prime lens, the Mark 1 version, of course, because the Mark 2s and Mark 3s are astronomical in price, but
It's still a windsock.
it has got me back into the other side of photography as well, while there's not much aviation happening for me anyway. It's just getting out there and shooting wildlife and stuff, and reactivating my other Instagram account, which is Bradley _ Rogers Photography. So if you want to check my other stuff out, then
Do that indeed.
then do that. Thank you.
The good thing is, though, Brad, what you spent on the lens, you can save on gym membership because you won't need to do the weights anymore.
So, don't I know about it? The old shoulder's been a bit sore. Carrying it on the new strap. So
yeah.
Shout out to Clifton Cameras and Alid for putting me in touch with the I'm going to forget the name now. The strap, Peak Design strap. Can't recommend that highly enough. Yeah. Very, very good.
Good stuff.
Useful system.
Good stuff. Likewise, to Wayne, I've been doing a fair bit of processing. I went back to my RIAT 2024 shots, which I had not touched. And I've actually not got some bad ones in there. So I might put those up on for my photos this month on the Facebook page and the Instagram page. I'll send you a couple of those through. I've got some nice ones. I was quite pleasantly surprised. I didn't think I'd done that well. And actually, I hadn't done too badly. So I was quite pleased with that. Got my Phantom calendar downstairs. So I've got 12 months of Phantoms now to look at. Just go, there you go.
More excuse to go and take some more, I reckon.
Yes, possibly. And I'm working, unfortunately. I was going to join you in the loop, and a spanner's been thrown in the works, literally, because I've booked myself out with work, so I can't go to the loop trip. But there we are. Sorry about that, guys.
I didn't know you were a mechanic, Dave.
I'm not a mechanic, trust me.
You said the spanner's been thrown in the works.
Yeah, a spanner has been thrown in the works. That's a saying, Wayne. Okay. Oh, dear. Right. So, clear for takeoff. Your first steps in aviation photography. What got you into photography? So, let's talk to Bradley first. How did you get into photography, specifically aviation photography?
Yes. So, for me, I kind of, as far back as I remember, I always thought planes were cool, and I think for what normal inverted commas child doesn't love military stuff and running around as like a kid playing army soldiers and all that kind of stuff. So, but my granddad was in the RAF himself. It is a little bit of an interesting story attached to that he saw national conscription was coming up in the 50s and didn't fancy the army and didn't fancy the navy, so enlisted himself to join the RAF. Ended up in the military police, so he didn't see a single plane. Yeah. Anyway, so whenever we went away in holidays as kids and that, we go for half terms and usually end up at an aviation museum somewhere. So I guess that seed was sort of planted, and then I kind of suppressed that for a bit. Yeah. You know what happens when you're growing up. You try and find all sorts of things, really try and find what you're interested in. And it wasn't until my boss at work said, we go to the air tattoo. And I was like, all right, how does that work? He said, well, we don't actually go in. We go to this place called Totterdown, which we talked about in the podcast. Thinking I'm just going to turn up in a farmer's field and, be really disappointed. And I have to say, watching the Vulcan that first time taking off, and I was like, you know what? Taking videos on a really crummy tablet, it's just not cutting it for me. So I decided to get into photography, and we'll talk about some of the kit that I started out with in a bit.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where it came from.
So you kicked yourself off. Kieran, go on. How did you kick yourself off into aviation and aviation photography?
Yeah, so I think there's elements of me and Bradley living a parallel life here. So as a young child again who doesn't like noise and aviation and anything that makes noise and burns fossil fuels, really. But my granddad was a huge influence on my love of aviation. So it took me to my first air show when I was, I think, about 11. And it was at Duxford. It was the 75th anniversary of the Spitfire, if I remember correctly. And I remember seeing an F-15 doing their display. It was the year that the Americans brought the pilot over but flew a Lakenheath jet, I think.
Modern aircraft.
For those, yeah. And I was just taken aback. And that was what I knew that I loved. Went to a few more air shows, and then again, life sort of changed, and my granddad wasn't with us anymore, so I started going to air shows. Then got a bit older and started realising that there was air shows that I could go to, and got into photography at a local photography club and found that wasn't really for me. And realised you could go to Cosford on a train. So I booked tickets for me and a friend to go to Cosford on the really hot weather day. Got absolutely sunburnt, went to Cosford on the train. And those that have ever been to Cosford will know that's like you get about 4 hours of the air show because you spend the rest of it on the train. And so I went, this air show thing, and maybe I'll wait till I learn to drive. And then I passed my driving test.
Yeah.
And boy, did my little Kia Rio for 7 years of ownership take me to as many air shows as possible. But yeah, that was how I then really got into air shows, that side of things, and realised that air show and aviation photography was sort of a genre in itself. And I met people through Centre of Aviation Photography, and just realised that was a series of events that I could do through the year. It was more than just standing at an air show, and that's where it sort of all kicked off for me.
Yeah. Wayne, come on, you. How did you find yourself getting into aviation and aviation photography?
Well, it's similar. My granddad was in the RAF. He told me the Japanese actually surrendered when they found out he was going over there. But he never actually saw active service, but he did actually circumnavigate the globe in a Sunderland. So,
Wow.
but I think the main influence was we moved to Lincolnshire when I was 7. Lived in Metheringham, which was near Lincoln, so we used to get woken up in the middle of the night when the Vulcans were scrambling from Waddington and Scampton. We moved to another village that was closer to Coningsby when the F4s were there. Dad used to take us over so we could sit at the end of the runway and watch the chutes come out. Cranwell was full of JPs. Obviously, the BBMF were flying around. Never saw a Lightning, but heard a few. You get the F-111s flying over when the Yanks were on manoeuvres. Dad was also a removals driver, so it was going up to places like Lucas and Lossiemouth and Old Bedford removals lorry. Take you a couple of days to get there, a couple of days to get back. But while they were unloading, I used to sit on the cab and just watch these flames taking off and landing, which were the Phantoms up there. So that sort of got me interested in aviation. Never did aviation photography. Sort of fell into that in later life, and that was really Emma's fault when she bought me a taxi ride in Just Jane for Christmas one year, and booked me on a Just Jane nighttime photography thing, and that was it. I stopped photographing horses and concentrated on aircraft, and that's it really. So it was granddad, location, girlfriend.
Yeah. I had no relatives at all that I knew were in the Royal Air Force or flying at all or anything like that, though later years I discovered that my granddad had joined the Royal Flying Corps when he was 16 in 1917 or something like that, just before it became the RAF. So he became an engineer in that. So that's the only tenuous link I've got to that. But I think mine was when I was a kid, we went on holiday to Yorkshire. Now, I grew up in southeast London. You would get Heathrow traffic over you. You get all the light stuff coming off from Biggin Hill. Biggin Hill obviously was my local airport and the local show that I used to go to. But we were up on the North York Moors. They'd hired a Dormobile. You probably remember what they are, Wayne. Yeah, it's like a
40 mile an hour flat out.
40 mile an hour flat out. Driving in those days up the A1 to Yorkshire. I think we left at 7 in the evening and got up there at 7 in the morning. I remember sleeping in the back of this thing. It's kind of a camper van, let's say. So we hired this. We went up to the North York Moors. And my mum and dad were there. The table was out. The Calagas stove was on. The kettle was on the thing. The brew was being made, and there was this almighty noise coming towards us. And we weren't too far from Fylingdales. And I just turned around and I just saw these 3 triangles coming towards us, very low, very loudly.
UFOs.
And no, not UFOs. They weren't TR-3Bs, with black smoke belching out the back of them. I mean, it was 3 Vulcans, and that was it. It was hooked. It was like, oh my God, what are those? I could have only been about 4 or 5, and it's the living daylights out of me. It was so loud, thundering across the top of us. I don't know if they were using us as a target or something like that, because we were the only people there. So literally had this fly past of these 3 Vulcans, disappeared off, and that kind of got me the bug. And I think for the photography side of things, why I wanted to pick up on photography was I remember being at Biggin, down O3 end for one of the Biggin Hill shows, and 2 RAF Phantoms were doing a dual departure. So this is probably where my Phantom loves come from as well. And these 2 RAF Phantoms just taking off and being so low. And there was a guy from, not the Air Scouts, but from the other lot, the lot that marched a lot, the Air Training Course. Sorry, guys. As an ex-Air Scout, we used to take the
cadets, as they are these
the Air
days.
Cadets. Yeah, there we are. So literally, there was a guy there, and he had his camera, and he was just taking pictures of them, clunk, 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 and it was just brilliant. And I never knew how those pictures ever turned out, but I'd love to have seen those pictures, because he was, it was the days when you were closer to the runway, and this was kind of like in your chos levels of being close to the aircraft. So it was fantastic.
Health and safety.
Yeah, health and safety wasn't there those days. and we were really, I don't know, we were behind the fence, so obviously we were safe. But and Biggin Hill at that time didn't have the best of safety records, let's say. So it was one of those moments where it just stuck with me. So yeah, that's how I got into. That's why I then wanted a camera and went on to that. So we've spoken about how we got into it. Should we speak about what our first gear was and stuff like that? That's probably a good way. Yeah,
God.
Yeah, here we go. Right, okay.
We're going in reverse order now.
Yeah, should I kick it off? All right. So I got into the photography, and right, okay, my 18th birthday came up. What do you want for your birthday? I said, right, I want a camera. No idea. My mum and dad went to Argos. They picked out an MTL5 with various zoom lenses and kit lenses and stuff like this.
That's modern.
Yeah, a Praktika MTL5. And
For those who don't know, Praktika was East German when it was a part of the USSR communist camera, but
they were
bulletproof.
okay. They were okay. Bulletproof is the word. I've still got the MTL5 somewhere. I think it's in the drawer down there. Clunk, clunk. And it really does clunk a lot, but that
One
was
frame every 6 minutes.
Yeah. If you could wide it, with your finger and
If
stuff
you could
like
focus
that.
it.
So I decided that I got into that. I went through an assortment of lenses and stuff like that, and I did some research. And there was a guy I used to, it was a woman I used to work with. Her husband was a photographer. He was into wildlife photography, and he went out to Africa and he did a safari, and he came back with these amazing pictures of lions and stuff like that. And I said, "What camera you got?" He said, "Oh, I've got a Nikon." It was like, okay. So John Watson was to blame for the Nikon. So I got an F301, which came out, which was, it was an automatic shutter, so you could go through roll of 36 in 2 minutes or something like that. And that was my first, proper camera, let's say. I got it with I think it was a Tamron, a 55 to 300 zoom, and a 14 to 28 wide angle that I bought at the time. So I'd saved up all my money, got rid of a load of stuff, bought these things, and that's what I had. Stuck with it for years, went around, Europe doing shows, Ramstein, Avord with the, you ever seen my Mirage F5 shot? With the JTO takeoff, it was taken on
You
film.
have to share it.
It was
Sounds
taken
like
on
one for the
film.
Instagram after this pod.
Yeah, it was taken on film. So it's not the greatest of photos, but it was a Mirage 5 JTO takeoff at Avord. That was fantastic. So I remember doing that show. Then I met my wife, and I gave it all up. So that's kind of my story of where it is. We're going to talk about in a minute what gear we would recommend to people to go for. So we'll do that after we will talk about our first gear. So next up, Wayne, because you went third last time. Go on.
Yeah, like Dave, I go back to the film days. Used to steal my parents' Kodak Instamatic, which was a 110 camera. Tiny little thing, crap quality. And my first camera that I got for Christmas one year was a Kodak disc camera.
Yeah.
Flat. Used to shoot really crap images because it was even smaller than 110. 15 shots, cost you an arm and a leg to get it developed. But that was where I started. First SLR camera was the Praktika MTL3 before I could afford the MTL5. So it's not an age thing. It was supposed to I was a bit poorer than Dave and couldn't afford the
I
5
don't,
at the
I don't know
time.
about that. I don't know.
But I did have a second-hand 500mm lens that went with it. But I think it was something like it was tiny. It was almost like a tube out the middle of a kitchen roll. So there was no big glass on it.
Sigma, and I'm sure it was Sigma, did an 800mm lens that was a concave, one of those mirror lenses with the it had a big black bit in the middle of the lens, and it was 800mm, and it was tiny little thing, and everybody thought, oh yeah, we got to go and try that. I never did. I wish I had.
No, I wanted to take pictures of the moon, but it just didn't work. I just wasted film. But I moved away from Pentax in my 20s and we moved away from Praktika in my 20s and went to Pentax. Best camera I ever had was the ME Super. Moved up to the MZ5 when I had a bit more money, which, like your Nikon, was sort of semi-automatic. You could hold your finger and burn a roll of 36 in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then fell into the digital world and bought a Sony Cybershot, which was even stood on the pit wall when I was doing BSB. You'd take a picture of a bike and you'd press the button, and about 2 seconds later it would actually fire the picture. So they were crap, and it sort of put me off photography, and I just walked away from photography for quite a long time until I decided to look at these new digital SLR cameras. Went to Jessop's, bought a 400D, which was sort of bottom of the range. I think they called it Rebel TI in the States. But bought a 7200 f2.8 white lens, and it worked really well. Moved up through 40D, 5D Mark III, which was a really good camera, and the 5D Mark IV, which was, well, as Bradley knows, he still uses it, is an excellent camera. And again, good glass on those bodies, you can get some good results. Then moved up to mirrorless, R5 Mark II, R1, and that's where we are now. And I think mirrorless is just a massive leap in technology. It's almost, I would say, as big as the leap from going from film to DSLR, going from a 5D Mark IV up to an R5 was just a massive jump in technology. And well, that's it. And here we are now. So let's move to the guys that...
Yeah, let's go to the youngsters. Yeah.
Let's move to Kieran, because when I did lend him a Pentax, he didn't know what the film was when I gave him a roll.
That's bit disingenuous. I couldn't load the film, but I knew what it was. Yeah, so I guess the first camera I ever used for aviation photography, I actually couldn't tell you the model of, but it was a Christmas present aged, I think I was like, I say 10 or 11, and it took AA batteries and was a little Polaroid point and shoot. I have one picture of that F-15, and it's a bit small in the viewfinder, is what I'd say. I struggled to work out it was an F-15 looking at it. Moving on a bit further then, I was very much of the generation that wanted to be a YouTuber. It was YouTubers coming up and coming, so I bought cameras for video quality. And so I remember waltzing to Jessop's as well, Wayne, although I think I may have been the kiss of death for Jessop's, because I think I went bust about 3 months later.
It was all the YouTube reviews you left.
Yeah, clearly. And I said, I need a camera that's 1080p. 1080p video, that's what I need. Nothing else, 1080p video. And so I did, and I walked with a Sony, I think it was like HX300. Used that for a little bit. It was what you'd call a bridge camera, so fixed lens, digital zoom, all that kind of stuff. But you could do manual stuff. And then after that, I did some photography with that. And I would like to say I got involved in a camera club. And we were doing some macro photography of all things. And I couldn't use the flash because it didn't have a hot shoe. And it was around the time I was going to Cosford Air Show. And there were a couple of photographers who ran that club that I'd got to know quite well, who shot using Olympus gear with Micro Four Thirds. At the time, Olympus stuff was the more expensive of the Micro Four Thirds, and Lumix were doing the G3, the G5, etc. So I went on MPB, a well-known sort of used camera site, and bought myself a G5 second-hand, tiny little. If I didn't even buy it. I borrowed a 14 to 42 millimeter lens. So, bear in mind, Micro Four Thirds 2x crop factor for those that don't know. and a 40 to 150mm lens. And I borrowed both of those and then eventually ended up buying them. Moving on a bit, eventually struck lucky with a Facebook Marketplace deal and decided I wanted an Olympus camera because they were better for weather sealing. They were better for action in general. They've always pushed the wildlife market. So got an Olympus EM1X. And that was during COVID, where Olympus then released the 100 to 400mm. And I think I bought it on about day 3. And it was really hard to get stock at the time because, of course, nothing was moving around the world. And yeah, got 100 to 400mm. And that was my setup for a good few years. Around the time of COVID happening, Olympus released a camera called the EM1X, which was like the action wildlife camera for them. So it was built like a tank. If anyone's interested, there's a nice blog on Co-op Online comparing it to the OM1 that I've just done.
Good plug.
And I used that. Bought a second one of those, and I think I saw that used at a camera shop. But anyway, discovered that I could get 2 of these for a reasonably good price because nobody in the Micro Four Thirds market wanted a big camera, and these were big in the Micro Four Thirds world. So bought 2 of those, used those, and they were fantastic. And it was all going so well in the camera world, and my bank account was all going so well. And then I borrowed an OM1 Mark II, which is OM system. So Olympus sold their imaging division, and they can't use the Olympus name, so they're now OM system. Bought an OM1 Mark II after being loaned one, and it's another huge jump that I like. So yeah, I've gone through. I mean, in the middle of that there was an Olympus EM5 that was a little side gig purchase because I fancied trying one of those as well. And scarily, I've still got all these cameras in a box. So if anyone needs a Micro Four Thirds cameras, no
you're the man to talk to. Yeah.
But yes, so every so often I get one out of the box, something different. So yeah, been through the range, but stuck with one system through the years.
Brad, go on.
Yeah,
so how did you get into it?
I film is an alien concept to me, so I politely nodded along with your stories there. So. But yeah, so I remember going to it doesn't seem that long ago, but I guess it is now. I think it was the 2018 Abingdon Air Show with the most appalling bridge camera known to man. I think it was a Fuji something or other, and I remember I could see the shots I wanted to take.
Yeah,
but you just can't achieve them, and I think that's something that I still do now. Is you think you've got the shot, and you're kind of making it up in your head. But anyway, I digress. So I actually was lent a Canon 10D, a whopping 6.3 megapixels, with a Sigma 70-300 lens, and went to the Cosford 2018 show and shot everything JPEG and everything. But I had a guy who sadly no longer with us, who sort of took me under his wing, knowing that I was interested. And he sort of encouraged me and said, look, what you're taking is good stuff. So I then plucked up the courage and went out and bought a 600D with a Canon 70-300 lens with IS, and sort of went from there. But there's this mysterious part that people don't tell you about, which we'll come on to later, and probably it's an episode for another pod. Is the whole other side of editing that nobody seems to tell you about, or at least the circles that us guys are moving in now. We know that there's this mysterious other side where you can take a photo and go and do something with it later. So I went through another 3 cameras before I sort of got happy with what I wanted. So I went to a 750D, didn't like that. Managed to get an 80D from somewhere, which I still have now for the crop factor. And I even had a 6D Mark II, all Canon, of course. But the 6D, people are not familiar with that, has a terrible or abysmal focus points and dynamic range. So the moment you try lifting the shadows, utterly appalling amount of grain. And the focusing points, they took the focusing system out of a crop sensor and put it in this full frame camera, but didn't enlarge it to fit the frame. So all your focusing points were clumped in the middle. So anyway, I eventually went to the 5D Mark IV, which is just an unbelievable camera, which so much so I wrote one off at
Yes, you did,
Tattoo in
didn't you?
2020.
Yes.
3.
You went swimming
Yeah,
with it,
rain.
didn't you?
Um,
been
and
in the
that's
boat
still
in,
above
like-
my head now on the shelf like a paperweight. And a reminder of that day, and so much so I bought another one because I was so happy with that camera.
Yeah.
So we talked to Alid about the jumps to mirrorless in the future, but right now for me, I'm not going anywhere. I love that camera to bits.
Yeah, and if you're happy with where you are, that's it. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That when I came back to photography after we'd had kids, and went to Air2 and really enjoyed it, and had a bridge camera that was bloody terrible, but I wanted to get back into photography, and ended up with the D5. Was it D5 300? I think it was, or D5000. No, D5000 I had, which was my first DSLR, and how different it was getting used to that, and the lenses and everything to coming through on Nikon to the Z8 and the Z9 that I've got now. And I'm still not happy with the photos that I take, but I wasn't happy then because I was comparing myself to certain photographers who, how are they getting these shots and making them look so good? And it's the processing, and I didn't realize that at the time. So yeah, kick yourself. Don't we've got some advice later, and I'll come on to what my advice is. But we quickly, because obviously time is getting on, and we've waffled on quite a bit. So what gear would we recommend today? So I'll go back to me, and what I would say to, if you want to shoot Nikon, and take no notice of anybody that says it's not good, because it is good, and Canon's great as well. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I'm comfortable.
There's pros and cons on every brand.
There is.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with Nikon. All right, so that's where I come from. That's what I've shot historically. So that's why I'm here. So if I was going to say go out and get a Nikon as a starter, go and get a D750, a D7500, or something like that. D750 is probably better. If you can afford a D800 or a D810 or something like that, then go for that. And if you want to shoot aviation, you need the length, because aircraft are so far away from us. So Sigma lenses are great. They really, really are. They can be a little soft at the top, and that means they're slightly out of focus. They're not focused in as much as you want them. They're not sharp focusing. But I would say that if you can afford the Sport 150 to 600, even the 60 to 600, which is a beast of a lens and bloody heavy, go for that. If you can find a second
That
hand one of
works
those.
really well with the 5D Mark IV.
Yeah,
Great
again,
lens on the 5D Mark IV.
That's exactly it. So that lens works because of Sigma, because they're not stuck with one make. They can make them for everybody, and Sigma make fantastic lenses, as we all know. So that would be my recommendation to start with. That go and look at MPB, Wex, go to Clifton Cameras, have a look on their website, just search around. But actually, and this is probably a thing as well, if you can afford to hire it and try it and see what you like, or borrow
Definitely.
somebody's one. That's it. That's what you do. Wayne, come on. What's your recommendation?
Slightly different to you, because I would say that nothing wrong with Sigma lenses, but I would say that spend your money on the lenses over spending your money on your body. And if you was to look at some of the shots that I took with that 400D, which was entry level before Canon started doing the 1000 series, which were the really, really cheap cameras, it was a crap camera. It made Bradley's 10D look like a Rolls Royce. But by putting the L series lenses on there, you could really get some good images. So I think if you're on a budget, spend the money on the glass, not on the bodies.
Yeah.
The glass won't go out of date.
Yeah.
As in glass, when we talk about buying glass, we talk about the lenses. The lenses won't go out of date as quickly as the bodies will as well. So if you invest on the lenses to start off with, and you haven't got the money, get a slightly cheaper body, and when you've got the money, upgrade the body. And it's all about the lens. And this is where you look at your iPhone or your Samsung phone with God knows how many megapixels now, and a crappy 2-3 millimeter piece of perspex, you're never going to get pictures like we can take.
No.
They may look good, but you try blowing them up or printing them, and they are crap.
Yeah. It's about budget, isn't it? You've got to think about what you're going to get. The Canon 100 to 400, there's several marks of that lens, isn't there? But that's a fantastic airshow lens.
Yeah, the Mark II's far better because it's got zoom in on the ring on the outside. The Mark One had that horrible pull push zoom system on there.
Yeah.
But again, that's a great lens paired up with the 5D Mark IV, which you can get relatively cheap now.
Yeah.
If you want to go mirrorless, pick up something like an R5, an R6, well, or an R3, and stick the 100-500 lens on there, which is a fantastic lens for not too much money.
Brad, what would you say?
So yeah, again, as we've said, this is a lot depending on your budget, and that's always going to govern what you can. So I think rather than me waffle camera names at me, I would get the camera you can afford, and I would say, and I would go secondhand especially if you're not sure if you're going to take it up or not. And MPB is someone I've used all the time. MPB.com. That's where my new lens come from, actually. And you want something at least 70 to 300 if it's a crop sensor, and go from there, really. And we spoke about the Sigma. I started with after the 7300, I went to the 150 to 600 and the contemporary. And if that's what you want to start out, I would look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Probably, if you're going to spend your budget, look to spending most of it, as Wayne says, and I should have said this as well. Most of it has got to go on your glass, your lens. That's the most important thing. Do your research there. What you can afford, and then what body you can put on it. Kieran, what would you say? Because you shoot differently. You shoot the OM system. So come to it from your angle.
Yeah. So for me, I think OM system shouldn't be discounted as a new starter sort of kit. You can get flagship technology for price of mid-range gear if you're going full frame. Something like the M1X these days, £700, something like that. Excellent airshow camera. Got AI tracking. Had AI focus tracking before it was called AI focus tracking, before the world needed AI. The other side of it, I'd say as well, with the sort of buying new gear, and it's something that you've kind of all touched on with budget, is have a photography budget that covers going out to places, seeing, getting to museums, getting to base visits, things like that. If you blow all your budget on a camera gear, you're never going to use it.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
and that's something to consider. That's why used is worth considering. Getting the camera that you can afford is worth considering. But yeah, look at the different systems out there. I will fly the flag for crop sensors as well. They're an option. Don't believe everything you read about. If it's not full frame, it's not a good photo. No. Plenty of images that I've taken on OM systems that I'm more than happy with, and other people are no doubt more than happy with.
Yeah. It's whatever floats your boat, and it's true what Brad said, that you just got to go for something that feels right for you at the end of the day. And if you can borrow kit, if you've got a mate who's got the kit, you borrow their camera, or you trial one. If, say, for instance, you're down at RIAT this year, you're sat in Freer and you haven't got a decent camera, well, go and try one. You're going to have, all the makers are going to be there this year. So you're going to be able to try all the different camera systems and find out what works for you. Obviously, bring a CF Express card and an SD card, because you'll need that to change between the different cameras and stuff like that. We've got a load more to cover in what we want to talk. So I'm thinking we might split this episode.
Oh, exciting. Definitely.
So, I think possibly, Dave, that we should, the next section, which is quite technical, I think we should possibly do that as a separate recording and sort of jump to the end of our schedule.
Yeah, we could do, but I don't want to edit this, so shut up, Wayne. I'm leaving that in. I'm leaving this discussion in because I'm not editing it. I'm just saying we've got a lot to talk to, a lot to get through that we've put on this, and we've put a lot of work in this. So if we split this and then we come back next week with a bit more, hopefully that will tempt people to listen a bit more, won't it?
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's like a drug dealer, isn't he? Here's your first fix free.
There we go. But you don't have to pay for this. Right. This has been episode 1 of our look at aviation photography for beginners, and it is the episode topic of Cleared for Takeoff. We will be back with Cleared for Takeoff Part 2 next week. Look after yourselves. I'm Dave Lockwoods. Next one, please.
I've been Bradley. See you guys.
You've been Bradley. I thought you've always been Bradley.
Yeah, I've been Kieran.
Yes.
Thanks for listening, folks.
And today I've been John Dibbs. Sorry, I'm Wayne Kenward.
No, you are not John Dibbs.
I wish one day.
We all wish that.
Yeah, we all wish we were John Dibbs. Let's say that. Right. Thanks for listening to this one. We'll be back again soon. Lots more on this topic. Take care, and we'll see you soon.